All right, thank you everyone for joining. My name is Manny Jimenez. Welcome to the Talking Turkey Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm joined by the champ, Cody, my couple Java Williams. Welcome, Cody.
The champ is here.
Oh boy, it's gonna be a rough show. I'm also joined by Tim Mile High Lewis, who we're experiencing some technical difficulties, but we're here. We're making it. How we doing, Tim?
I hope. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're good. All right.
Yes. All right. So far, so good. I was a champ way back in the day. I remember what that felt like, but
it's been a while.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Been a while. So
I don't know what that feeling's like. So I'm really looking to take this show and to tap into that energy from Cody and see what that looks like, and hopefully get a good understanding of what it takes to finally get over the hump in my own damn league.
I'll try and help you live vicariously through me here.
Oh, wonderful. I love to hear it.
How many years has the league been going on for you now?
We're at 20. We're at 20.
20 years and no wins.
Yep. Lots of faltered, playoff dreams over and over again. Yep.
Wow.
But here we are. We missed last week, and we're back after the Christmas break. The way our schedule went, the show lands on Monday. Didn't want to have you guys try to jump on during Christmas. Makes no sense. So we didn't have the show post the second round of playoffs and the Loser Bowl championship. We talk about. So we'll get into that, and we'll talk about how in this final week here of our season, NFL has actually one more week where Cody was able to pull out quite a feat here over my man crush Rob all season, and Rob's team finally didn't live up to the hype in the last final game of the year. Unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. But congrats, Cody. It's a little bit of spoiler, but we'll talk about how you got to here, and we'll let you give your little monologue here of what it takes to be a winner, to be a champion, and the dedication and hard work it takes to get there.
That's right. Lots of push-ups, lots of sit-ups, lots of mock drafts throughout the year. It's a year-round thing. There is no off season when you're a fantasy champion. It's my fourth one now in the Turkey Bowl, and so there's no off days really, and I think, Manny, you take too many off days, and that might be why.
Yeah. Entire possible, trips to Mexico, that type of stuff. Yep.
Chicago, you're spending a lot of time in.
A lot of time in Chicago. Yep, in the Lions Den for sure. So, yeah, but let's kind of get back right into it. With going back 2 weeks ago, where we had a big matchup in that semifinal round with Rob versus Alex,
brother
matchup to see who went to that final. And the second matchup was Ricky versus Cody. Again, a nearly brother matchup. We can call it that, where Rob and you ended up being victorious. And we can break down that first game between Alex and Rob. I really loved Rob's setup here with Jalen Hurts had a great big week that week. He had Justin Jefferson also that he got from trade from Angel, which had a monster implications for him. And so that trade ended up being very, very fruitful for him, where we had talked about who we think we could win that game. We're rooting for Rob, but we liked Alex's matchups, and we're like, okay, well, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, Rob ended up pulling it out. Cody, since you were the one going to face the winner, who was the one that you were really targeting on trying to play? Who would you have rather played?
Looking at both of them, knowing that Alex has McCaffrey on his roster, I was really hoping Rob would win. Plus, it seemed more like Rob had drafted his own team, so I was leaning towards rooting for Rob, especially just the prospects of going against McCaffrey when he's going to get to play, the Commanders and that defense. He could have put up. I wouldn't have been surprised if he put up another 40, 45-point game. So I was really rooting for Rob in that matchup there, and he ended up winning by about 25, I think. Yeah.
What do you see there? Yeah. What do you see in that matchup, Tim, between Alex and Rob that really stuck out? Do you think it was just bad performance on Alex's team, right, to not put up over 80, or just Rob's team was too much of a juggernaut at that point?
I think it was Alex's team kind of just laid an egg. It was probably one of his lowest scores of the year.
Oh, it had to be.
I mean, it was the game, the Chiefs-Raiders game kind of sunk his lineup. He only got 13 points from Mahomes and
Laporta
5
hurt him
points
as
from
well.
Pacheco. Yeah, Laporta with 1 point after his 3-touchdown game the week before.
Brutal.
The Niners defense up against Baltimore did not much. I mean, his Koo was one of his highest scoring players. That's never ideal when your kicker's your third highest score. That's usually not a great week. So, yeah,
That is a big number, to be fair, though. For 14 points per kicker is a pretty big number. So
it is, but I mean, he had 4.
But then, I mean, that's
single
insane.
digits.
It's not great. He couldn't get past 80 points,
No. Mahomes really, I think, is the reason he got done in. I think with the draft capital spent there, Mahomes really hasn't been that 25-point guy this season. He's averaging between 10 and 18 points.
Yeah, you would expect that's where you draft him 20 plus every week. That's what he did last year to be the top overall QB, but he just doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't have the pass catchers.
Pretty much every year, yeah. It's he's one of the top QBs. This is his first off year probably that I could think of since he's been in the league. But and then going against the Raiders at home with Pacheco too, who did nothing. He might have gotten injured in that game. I forget, but you would think those two guys against the Raiders is like a dream matchup, but not so much this time. So
Raiders defense is look strong the past month with Antonio Pierce. They're playing a lot better.
Yeah,
a lot more energy.
For sure.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the Raiders as a team, they look different, right? They don't look like the same old Raiders where he used to. They don't look like the guys getting penalized every other play. So he definitely has them playing a little different chip on their shoulder. And that win in Kansas City was very, very impressive to me. Yeah. So Mahomes, I think, really was an anchor point for Alex just to not be able to get over that hump where Rob, the Hurts AJ stack has been money for him all year. And like you, Cody, you and Rob having the top 2 quarterbacks in the season obviously shows why you guys were in that final game. I mean, it was massive. I think Jalen Hurts had only 5 weeks where he didn't score 20 points.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And AJ Brown the past month has low key not really gotten double digits. He's been pretty poor for him. So that stack kind of failed him in the playoffs, but still got him in the finals. But Jalen Hurts, I think I saw a stat where 32% of his fantasy points came from the tush push from 1-yard touchdown rushes. So how much can you rely on it, looking into next year if they don't have as many times where Swift gets tackled at the 1, someone ends up at the 1? Is he a guy you might trust next year? What do you guys think? Do you think he'll end up as a top 3 pick next year, next year's drafts?
Top 3?
Yeah, top 3
like,
QB pick, like as a QB. I think he was number 3 in the draft.
Yeah.
I think it went Mahomes, and then I took Allen, and then he took Hurts.
I don't see why not. I mean, it's hard to think of, especially with how bad Mahomes was this year. I think Mahomes will probably be drafted a little later than usual next year.
Yeah.
Any rushing quarterback that adds so much value, especially. Can you rely on that? There's probably going to be some regression with those 1-yard touchdowns, but he's still, he's got good weapons to throw to. As you mentioned, AJ Brown was really quiet the last part of the year. So it seemed like he had a lot more rushing touchdowns toward the end of the year. So, but I would still think he's one of the top 3 quarterbacks drafted. You could probably Lamar kind of fell, I think, this year. And I think with the way he's been playing lately, he was up and down. Obviously, this year we talked about it a lot, but he's just had a 5-touchdown game.
Yeah.
So, he might be one that goes earlier next year. So
he's finally looking comfortable in that offense, right? That was something that we talked about all year. Was like, with this new offense, when's it finally going to start clicking? Over the last month, he's been on fire. So
yeah.
And
unfortunately for Angel, it's just too little too late.
Yeah. I'm sure anyone who made it to their fantasy championship with Lamar ended up winning it, because I think he had a 39, 40-point game. Could you make it there with him on your roster? I don't know. It's probably tough.
Yeah. He was great. I definitely give a props to Lamar. We'll talk about him when we get to the quarterbacks. But yeah, so Rob pulled out the victory, got to that final game. We were all proud and happy for him. Saw Alex at Brewery X last week. Last Friday, and he was just like, "Man, this is BS." And I was like, "Hey, that's the way it goes."
Which part of it was BS? Just the fact that his team kind of failed him?
Yeah, team let him down, But I don't think he hates losing to his brother. None of us like losing to our brother. It's a horrible situation.
Yeah, had that happen in another league.
But so Cody, you went up against Ricky. It was that Belichick Brady matchup that we were all pining for. We thought we'd see it early in the playoffs, but we got it in the semifinal. Ricky's team was probably the hottest team going into the playoffs at the time. He was, we were definitely talked about how he was scorching through. But your team was still trugging along, made some valuable moves. You lit up the scoreboard pretty hefty. I think you were the weekly winner as well. Not last week at 132. Am I wrong there? Yep. So
no.
Yeah, well, going into the week, I know you were giving Ricky his good luck and everything. We talked about Brock Purdy potentially getting, we don't know what he was going to do against Baltimore. Obviously, he did not show up. What did he throw? 4 picks in that game?
Yeah. 2 or 3 of them weren't really his fault, but they still count in fantasy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the guy had no pressure. I mean, Baltimore disguised their blitzes, made him uncomfortable. They did a ton. So, yeah, that was a rough start for Ricky right there. Again, after putting up 100 points numerous times over the last few weeks, only putting up 88, not even breaking 90. So, yeah, it's tough to beat winning that situation. But he did have Mike Evans, and
thanks to you,
someone who I still kicking my own ass about, right? Mike Evans and Raheem Mostert, but good for him. He making it that far, and he got to that 3rd place game. But going in, Cody, I know you were kind of joking about with him, like, "Oh, Ricky, you got this. You got good matchups." But I'm sure you felt confident. Let's talk about how you felt going up against that matchup.
If I'm being honest, I didn't really feel that confident. It was a matchup I was trying to avoid, especially that round 1. He had the top score of the entire league the 2 weeks leading into the playoffs. So it's hard to feel confident when you're going against like a guy like that, and then he ends up smashing Javi. So I think going into this matchup, he had 3 or 4 consecutive weeks putting up over 105 points. It's never going to feel that great going into a matchup like that, especially when you look at his roster, and it felt pretty strong all throughout. So I wasn't feeling great. I really did mean it when I told him I thought he was going to beat me. And then as kind of the scores kept coming through, I got a couple garbage time touchdowns from Calvin Ridley, which padded my stats. Josh Allen against Tim's Chargers. That was the one matchup I felt really good about, and he came through for 27 points for me. But then, like you mentioned, Brock Purdy and Debo, he had the stack on Monday night, on Christmas of all nights. So it just felt there could be some poetic ending where if they'd combined for about 40 points, he would have topped me. And I could see a world where, Debo gets 15 and Brock gets 25 and boom, there's 40 and he ends up topping me. So I never felt good until about halftime of that Baltimore game. Then I kind of realized, okay, I'm actually going to beat him and move forward. And it did feel a little bit lucky, but putting up 132 points, I hadn't broken 100 for about 4 weeks in a row. So it felt good, and it felt like I had momentum going into the finals. So I definitely felt better about the finals matchup than I did with my matchup with Ricky.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Just a little peek behind the curtain there. And I think talking to Ricky afterwards, he was feeling confident about our matchup too. He kind of thought he had a really good chance to beat me.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, like, I don't think most of us, it was probably hard to see, the 49ers get dismantled like that,
Yeah, that was rough.
But I think we all kind of thought that they could hang with any team. The Cowboys were supposed to be a difficult defense, and Purdy shredded them earlier in the year, so it seemed like he's capable of doing that to Baltimore, but obviously not the case. So that's the problem when you have a stack like that. We've talked about Hobby's stack, his 3-part stack that he's had all year, but just having a quarterback wide receiver stack that has a bad game like that can derail everything. So but obviously if you score 132, that's usually going to be all what you need. Not a lot of teams in our league ever score more than that. So
I would say the most surprising score of that is Calvin Ridley with the 22, just because
Yeah.
the volatility that he's been providing. I mean,
And it was all garbage
had so
time.
many-
It truly was.
I was following
It
that
truly
game.
was
Yeah.
garbage time. I don't think he had even a point until the fourth quarter, if I
I
remember
think he had
right, or
5
maybe he had
going
one
into the
catch.
fourth quarter.
Okay, but I just
Yeah.
I know that both touchdowns were fourth quarter. So,
Yep.
but I mean, you still didn't take away his score, and you still have 110. So it's
True.
I mean, Calvin Ridley had minus 12 yards in that game. That should tell you everything you need to know about that game. I mean, he was just catching these crazy 1-yard touchdowns. I mean, it was ridiculous. So, wild. 9 targets, 1 carry, 2 touchdowns, and negative 12 yards. So,
He had 90
crazy
yards.
game for Calvin. 90 yard?
Six catches for 90 yards, and then 22 points total last week against the Buccaneers, I believe. He was going up against Mike Evans.
Yeah,
the Bucs just dominated that game.
Oh, 90 yards. Sorry, 12 yards rush, negative rushing. He got stopped for a 12-yard loss.
Yeah.
On his only rush.
Yeah.
So, but still great. I mean, good overall. Great pickup there. Great play, right? I mean, you played Nico Collins. Typically, you would have gone with Nico Collins in any other case, but that was a solid
with
move.
CJ Stroud being out, going against that Browns defense, it felt like a little bit of an easier call. Trying to go with Lockett against the Titan defense, that back end kind of seemed open to being shredded, and he had Metcalf, so I felt like I needed to play Lockett to try, and any points Metcalf might not get might come my way and Lockett.
Yep, good call there. So,
with Ridley, he was going up against the Bucs, who have their defense, I think, has gotten healthy, and they've been a little bit better lately. But although I think they just lost pretty bad this week, but I think their corners, they were out their top 2 corners that week possibly, and so it just, I was surprised by how badly the Jags got dominated in that game for the most part. So but hey, garbage time counts.
Garbage time counts. I think Trevor Lawrence had gotten hurt and taken out, and it was CJ Beathard came in, and he had eyes only for Ridley, and so he threw him that touchdown.
Only for Ridley,
yeah. So that always helped too.
Yeah.
And you bring up a great point, Cody, about Josh Allen. Like, I was actually at that game at SoFi on Saturday night, that Bills Chargers game. We were joking about it in our chat where, what are the Chargers even going to do? This is going to be a dismantling. That game ended up being way closer than it should have been.
Yeah, I think it was coming off that Raider game the week before where they got completely dismantled.
Yes, they gave him 60+ points, right? So we're expecting, Josh Allen's going to come into town and just put up 40 on him easy. That wasn't the case at all. I mean, being there. So what's funny is the dichotomy from real football to fantasy football. I'm watching Josh Allen throw balls in the dirt, overthrowing receivers. I'm like, dude, this guy can't hit anybody at all. He's trying to throw digs in the horrible spots, but he gets 2 rushing touchdowns and, gets 40 yards. It's, all of a sudden the fantasy score blows up. So while he, as a quarterback, had a really crappy game, fantasy, it was just a big time game for you. I looked at the final score. I saw, he put up 27 with such a terrible game. Like in person, because the Bills fans, when in person, they were really angry. They were screaming at Josh Allen. They were like, "What are you doing out there?" Well, it was funny. My father-in-law, he was there with me, and he was dressed like it was Buffalo. He had his full-on gear, cold gear on, winter gloves. I'm like, what is this guy doing? It was 60 degrees. That's in LA.
You're in LA.
But even he was disgusted with the play he saw. So it's just interesting dichotomy to see that in person. So, but Josh Allen,
as Tim mentioned, those rushing touchdowns are a little bit of a cheat code, and it really kind of helps pad those fantasy stats, especially with rushing touchdowns being worth 6, passing touchdowns being worth 4. Josh Allen had 2 of them these past 2 weeks. That's 12 points instead of 8. That's really going to help boost your stats, and that's not even counting the yardage you get from the rush.
No, not at all.
And he doesn't have to get them from 1 yard out with the help of all his entire team.
Exactly.
He's usually getting them from 5 yards out or so. But the Chargers just got the Chargers got that new coach bounce. That week.
Probably not a huge.
Yeah, they just, and then they lost again this week, of course. So, but I guess we shouldn't be surprised that they played a competitive game after Staley got fired. But So
Yeah, right. The team was they were jacked up. They wanted
new
to
coach
do
down.
something. Mac looked good. I mean, Josh Allen only completed 15 passes, so they did a great job against him. They just couldn't, get the offensive moving with Ethan Stick. He did have a rushing touchdown.
Yeah.
The crowd was surprisingly behind him. I would say it was a 70-30 Bills versus Chargers crowd, and but Ethan had a lot of fan going, in his corner, so it was good to see that. But yeah, Cody, congrats! That was a big win right there, and
Thank you.
as soon as I saw that Saturday, I was like, oh yeah, Cody's headed to the final. And then
Yep, thank you. Felt good. Kept the core of my team, my two running backs, Gibbs and Kyron. They both had 17 points and 19 points. So that's kind of as they go and Allen goes, my team goes. So they had good days. So it was gonna end up on the positive end for me there.
And within that same week, right? So we talked about how our league is structured with we have our 3 rounds of playoffs for the winners bracket. Our consolidation bracket, we only do the 2 rounds. We do the first round in week 15 and then the loser championship round in week 16. So in the same week where you and Rob advanced to the final, we had our loser bowl championship, which was against Andrew and Edgar. Oh my goodness. It was an ugly scenario. It kind of harkens back to the discussions we've had about playing the game and not giving up and talking about these rule changes that we've made. I don't even want to step into it. So Tim, I'm going to kind of let you, because you had a good segue about how this looked. Talk about Edgar's lineup and where, he lost 86-57. And this was the week when the Raiders completely blew out the Chargers. And talk about his team and what that looked like.
Well, the first thing is he started Josh Jacobs again, who was out. That was the second week.
Oh, you noticed
out.
that too?
Yeah. I think everyone noticed it except for maybe him, because Zamir White was there, didn't get picked up until the final round of the championship or playoffs. So there was that. I don't know that he would have won necessarily with that move, but certainly would have helped. And then it's hard to blame him too much. The matchup with the Raiders defense, they had just destroyed the Chargers, who it's the Chargers. So, but then they go into KC, and you think, well, that's not a great matchup. But the Raiders defense has looked a lot better in recent weeks. So, had he started the Raiders defense, that would have given him 21 more points. And then Zamir White, I don't know what score he got last week, but I know it was enough for him to win with just those 2 things right there.
I believe he had a 20-point game last week.
I think so. Yeah. I know
15.
It was at least 15.
15. Yeah.
15.
Okay. So that, couple moves right there, and he would not have earned the loser bowl trophy. So
yeah.
Maybe, it's like we talked about before. Maybe he actually wants it back. I don't know. But to not try in that week of all weeks is a little bit confusing. So
confusing is probably the right word to use, but the easiest word to use. I'm confounded. It's flabbergasted. It's any adjective I could think of. I'm like, what is going on here? Just we changed the rules for you, man, for you, so you could pick up guys without any penalty. Like, anyone, please, that don't go out like that. Don't go out without a fight. Ugh.
Yeah, a lot of guys could have been had for free. So
Yeah.
it's hard to understand. I don't know if he forgot about the loser bowl, or because it can be costly. So
he did leave Jacobs in his lineup 2 weeks in a row, so it's hard to blame that.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad I'm not the one in that position, but I know that if I was in that position, I'd be doing everything I can to not get my hands on that trophy again. So,
you mentioned that, and Andrew's never touched the trophy. It's his first year in the league, but it seemed like he was making moves and he was doing everything he could to avoid getting that last place spot.
And he did start the Commander's defense, so
he
did.
He kept his word.
He kept the promise.
They only got 1 point, hey, he rolled with them, and that that alone, he deserved to win. So
hey, that 1 point was more than Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams combined on the other opposing team. So
that's a good point. Yep.
That's right. You play the game the right way and you get rewarded. So yeah, Andrew, congratulations on keeping your word with the Commanders defense. We wondered why all year long you kept them. We know it was for this moment, for you to get over this hump and not be the first, person to have to put the license plate on that cute car of yours. So congratulations. But yeah, I mean, Andrew made some moves, right? Picking up Jordan Love.
yep.
Cooper didn't have a great game for him, but Devontae Smith showed up for him. And, Evan Ingram, even Austin Eckler had 8 points against Buffalo defense, pretty good. So, and Najee Harris too. So good job. Good job all around for Andrew. And
He
playing
held
the game
on to
the right
Tucker
way.
through his bye week, and he got him 12 points. Helped him climb out of it as well. But in this league, kickers usually end up with 7 to 9. So having double digits and getting 12 from the man over there is a big help as well.
We should also mention.
Mhm.
I was just going to mention the quarterback situation. He was a bit annoyed that Stafford had a big game in one of the earlier games. I forget if he played Saturday or what it was, and then he had Jordan Love as his starter, and he was worried that Stafford was going to handily outscore him. He was pissed at us for suggesting Love over Stafford. They ended up getting the same amount of points, so that was kind of funny.
Yeah,
that was funny. Hey, Love has been outstanding the last 2 weeks. We're gonna get into that, and he's definitely gonna be someone at the quarterback position that might be targeting next year. So, yeah, Andrew made a great call there. He was great either way. So you love being in that position where you're like, all right, I made the right decision no matter what it would be.
Yeah.
So good on him. Well, yeah, let's get right into where it all matters, where all the money happens, where all of the marbles on the table with our champion, Cody Williams. So first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you very
Well
much.
done.
4-time champ.
It's nice to know that people, our castmates are winning championships, so they can talk about it. I didn't want to bring Rob on here. I know I've felt the pain of losing 4 championships, so the last thing I want to do is talk about it. But Rob, kudos to you on a great season. You really did a great job with building that team. Faltered in the end there, but that team was pretty stacked, and almost wire to wire for you. So good stuff there. Just unfortunate, but Cody, let's talk about that this last week, starting Thursday Night Football with the Browns, and what that looked like. That probably scared you a little bit, right? You were like, "Oh my gosh,
More than a little bit."
So let's break that down. Thursday, Saturday through Sunday.
So Thursday, he has the Jets defense. He had picked up the Colts defense, I believe, and also Baltimore's defense. So I wasn't sure if he was going to end up sticking with the Jets, but he did, going against Flacco and the Browns. And early on, Flacco was just shredding that defense, and I could see the Jets' points dropping. I think they reached as low as 3 points at one point, and it was still the beginning of the second quarter, and it was feeling great. And then there's a sack fumble that happens, and then a pick six, and all of a sudden their points climb back up. And he ends up with 14 points. But if you watch that game, the Browns offense was, at least in the first half, shredding them. Elijah Moore got hurt, and it seemed like in the second half, the Browns weren't moving the ball quite as well. But at that point, they had a big enough lead to where they didn't really have to do too much. And of course, with the Jets offense on the other side, their defense is going to hold on. So they kind of were, just fine running the ball a couple times and then punting. So, yeah, he ended up with 14 points leaving that. And let me tell you, it didn't feel great after watching that game. It felt like he was starting to get some luck on his side, especially after that matchup. And I had no Browns, no Jets. So leaving Thursday night, he was up 14-0 there on me, just with his defense playing. So it didn't feel great.
Yep, that was an interesting game because the Browns put up a lot of points. But, sometimes that doesn't matter for the fantasy defense. You can give up a lot of points, but still obviously get a good amount of fantasy points. So, but yeah, without Amari Cooper and then losing Elijah Moore, when you're down your top 2 wide receivers, and Njoku had a huge game, I think, but otherwise, I think that was a little bit tougher for Flacco to move the ball once he lost Moore. So,
Yeah, he was falling
But,
asleep on the sideline there in the third quarter. So, I don't know what was going on with him.
yeah.
Well, new Sleepy Joe, as we call it.
There we go.
Talking about Joe Flacco, though, I mean, if you look at the last 3 weeks, he's played pretty damn incredible for the Browns. I mean, they have the second best record in the AFC right now. Their defense obviously is still carrying him, but he's played great, and Njoku's played great too. So even Cooper being out last week didn't matter. Elijah Moore. So yeah, I know people in other leagues that start Joe Flacco, and I had him a couple leagues where he definitely put up 20 plus points the last couple weeks. So not a bad start there.
Yeah. I mean, he's gonna give the ball to the other team. He's had a couple interceptions in each game he's been in, but he's really using the play action game well and pushing the ball downfield and just trusting his guys. Giving Amari, I mean, we saw the record-breaking day Amari Cooper had 2 weeks ago, and Njoku's been killing it. He's even using Elijah Moore better. So yeah, he's just putting the ball into his guys' hands and giving them a chance, and they're making plays with him.
Yeah, he's brought all those pass catchers to life in that offense. I mean,
yeah,
Amari Cooper was dropped. I think I picked him up for free a few weeks ago.
You did off of my waiver wire trash heap.
Just hoping, just like maybe Flacco will actually spark the offense, and
he did.
He sure did.
20-point game when you were playing me. It was scary.
Yeah, and then 47 the next week. I didn't see that one coming, but too little, too late there. But yeah, it's Browns offense. So to go with that defense, suddenly, I don't know that a lot of teams are going to want to play them in the playoffs. So
no, definitely not.
Be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they end up playing Baltimore, but I don't know how the seeding's going to end up. So
well, Baltimore will be number one. They'll be the first wild card seed. Yeah. So they won't meet until the
semis
divisional round.
Yeah.
They won't meet wild card round. Yeah. So, but that would be interesting to see what happens. Yeah. But so Saturday's games, Cody. All right. Yep. So you're going in down 14.
Yeah.
You're like, all right, Saturday games coming along. You got 3 games, right? Morning, afternoon, and a night, or was it just 2
no?
It's
just Saturday? Cowboys, and it was just Cowboys Lions.
Cowboys Lions. That's right. Yes. Cowboys Lions. So which would have crazy implications for that ending. I mean, those refs have been
not stupid, just that, but also playoff seeding as well between those teams.
Yeah. So you had Jahmyr Gibbs going.
And he's had the Dallas kicker all along. Has just been crushing it. I don't think he's missed a field goal this whole year. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. Aubrey is perfect. Yeah. Perfect on
even
the
season. 60. He had a 60-yarder, or maybe 62. He had like a 58-yard and a 62-yard field goal in the same game a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
So
I had Gibbs, and it was like, okay, here's my chance to get some points back. And he's going against his kicker. I'm down 14. And of course, starting off the game, Montgomery's in there, and I check his lineup, and he didn't start Montgomery. So that alone, like, okay, it's a little bit of a sigh of relief. Gibbs twice during this game broke off 2 long rushes. I think one was 22 yards and one was 33, both called back on holding calls. And it breaks my heart just as much as I know it breaks his to see that happen. Montgomery gets the goal line touchdown. It seemed like Montgomery was in there for majority of the snaps. Luckily, he was on Rob's bench, but man, that game was hard for me to watch, just solely looking for Gibbs in the backfield. It was a whole lot of Montgomery. And it's hard to blame them because they kept the game fairly close and they were in it at the end. So, what incentive do they have to change things up? But yeah, Gibbs felt like he performed a lot better. A couple bad penalties, cut his points in half, and he ends up with 4. Meanwhile, with how close the game is, Rob's kicker ends up with 9. So he's got 23 points, and I have 4 with my, one of my best running backs already off the board.
So the extra point to tie the game, to send it to overtime.
Yep.
Or maybe give the ball back to Dallas with 30-something seconds left.
Oh yeah. I was rooting for a PAT. Let's go to overtime. Let's give Gibbs more chances.
Yeah, and then the way the refs botched that ending, oh my gosh! I mean, so I'm assuming you guys saw the replays and everything. Right? It was the primetime game we all watched.
Oh yeah.
And did the ref completely botch that, or was it Dan Campbell trying to be too cute with sending 2 linemen to the head referee to check in?
I think both things can be true. I mean, he was definitely trying to be too cute. Apparently, he told the ref before the game, hey, if a situation arises where you see this, this is actually what we're doing. But that was 3 hours prior. The refs have other things they're worried about. You try remembering something I told you 3 hours ago, and you're not busy watching a game and trying to manage and, work and do your job with all these guys running into each other. So I think it's a little of both. How did you see it, Tim?
I mean, I just think you would think that it has to be whichever offensive lineman is going to declare himself eligible, like should be doing that by himself. Like to have two guys go over until like the ref kind of looked at him, but you're like, did he even register who said what there? It's hard to tell from the replay, but they're right in his face, and he probably can't tell who's who. And
it's a loud stadium.
It's a stupid way to lose a game, but they after getting called on that penalty, they should have just said, okay, fine, let's just see what happens in overtime. But instead, they decided to go for it again. So
and get another chance at it even after that.
Yeah, so it was weird, but it's. Cowboys fans are obviously not that upset about it because I'm sure they're upset with Mike McCarthy.
Yep.
Because McCarthy almost blew that game. Like I have a friend who's a fan he just cannot stand Mike McCarthy's time management, and he once again tried to give the opponent a way better shot at tying the game than he should have. So he got bailed out in that one, but just a weird sequence. So.
Very, very weird sequence. Probably the worst sequence though for the NFL, right? The NFL's been dealing with all these referee issues anyways this year. Been a lot of crazy bad calls that have happened. This one just looks bad because it was nationally televised. The only game on, it's the Cowboys, right? Of all teams, and it's just like
huge game too.
Huge game. Yeah. I mean, playoff seeding, major playoff implications there. So I just didn't like Dan Campbell, like you said, Tim going for it that second time. Just kick the extra point. Yeah. Let's take it to OT.
It's very
especially when you've had such a hard time scoring points, up to that point. You only have 19 points at the end of the fourth quarter. It's like, I understand going for it from the 2-yard line, but then when you're pushed back 5 yards, that's not a given right there. So, but from what I understand, the officiating crew is some of them or all of them are being disciplined in some way. Like they won't be officiating any playoff games. So that's good at least.
They're downgraded, yeah. But I went back and I was reading. I was like, that crew is like known for being one of the most accurate, the best groups, right? So they just made a huge blunder, right? So it's like now there's probably going to be potential where they shouldn't be in the playoff game, right? Because they're a very high functioning crew. But now a lower functioning crew is going to be in a playoff game. You could have the same situation. So NFL is like biting off his own foot at this point with this ridiculousness. So. What I don't like either is how these refs are really so protected that the players can't say anything and the coaches can't say anything because as soon as they do, 20 grand, 10 grand, you get popped. The refs, they like what they did, that decision they made can affect. It affects the playoff seeding, but then it affects like these fan bases and how much money gets spent at these games and these playoff games and stuff, right? There's financial impacts to these major financial impacts. So I just didn't like it at all.
Yeah, there's never any consequences for the refs or any admission that they made the wrong call. It seems like there's just no attempt to make it right. Obviously, you can't make it right when a call completely blows a game, but you could at least admit the mistake and punish, at least publicly punish some of the officials when they make a mistake. They don't need to be fired, maybe, but just do something to get them to get it together. So too many games this year have been just marred by officiating. So I just hope it doesn't happen in the playoffs, but I'm sure it will.
Oh yeah, we're 100%. I would put a bet down now that we're going to see a game dictated by a late game penalty that's going to change an outcome for sure.
Oh yeah.
So Cody, after Saturday night's game, you're down 23-4.
Correct.
Right?
With my number one, running back already off the board, and then his defense and kicker are the ones who are outscoring him.
So definitely didn't feel great.
1A running back.
Okay.
What
Well,
a-
One B.
first one I drafted,
Yeah.
I think. Oh, I Chubb, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you
Not
drafted Gibbs
ideal.
higher than he drafted Gibbs higher than Kyron. That's his one.
Well, yeah,
Kyron wasn't
pickup,
even
but-
drafted. So
Yeah. So yeah.
but no, I'm just saying, like, fantasy wise,
Yeah.
and we'll get to that. But yeah, it's obviously not an ideal start for you.
No,
to have
not great
Gibbs
going
get
into Sunday.
4.
Correct. Yeah.
So Saturday morning, I start watching the games, and the first thing I see, so I'm watching as a perspective. The commissioner league's got to do his job, watch the league.
Of course.
And I see Cody's, all right, he's got a little hole to climb. Immediately, Texans, bam. They're over 20 points. Like, whoa, here we go. We got a game. So, Cody, how did that feel? Like getting that bump immediately from the Texans defense?
I mean, that right there felt great. Having that return for a touchdown felt like I made the right move. I was kind of looking through defenses. I had picked the Texans up just because of their matchups going into the fantasy playoffs. They get the Titans and the Browns, so it felt good. But none of the defenses on the waiver wire felt great. I had the Colts as well, but yeah, the Colts were playing the Raiders, and who knows what kind of confidence these guys are playing with. I didn't feel great about that. So it just gave me a renewed sense of confidence having picked Houston and gone with them, and having them reward me with a great outstanding day against the Titans, especially because Henry historically has really shredded them. So it was a little question mark going into it, but DeMarco really has those guys playing well. He's a San Francisco defensive coordinator from last year, now head coach in Houston. He's really turned that whole team around. So they got a really good.
Well, when you start the number one defense on the week, yeah, you started number one defense on the week there, so that's a huge lift, right? Yeah. So good on you there. And so now you're in the 10 o'clock window of games, and we're talking Pacific time. So now. What's the mood like? You got Nico Collins, who's also playing pretty good. You're like, okay, now I'm back in the mix here, or?
So it was interesting. Besides Gibbs, all my players, because there were 9 or 10 games at that 10 a.m. slot, my whole team was going to be done after those 10 a.m. games. So it was weird looking at the score and seeing like, okay, he still has guys left, but I'm done after this. So at about halftime, it still wasn't feeling great. I think I had about a 15 to 18 point lead on Rob as these games are going into halftime. But again, he still has, guys left to play that haven't even started. I didn't feel great about my receivers. You could probably go back and look at all the receivers I was picking up through the week. Jacobs, I wasn't confident he was going to play again for the Raiders, so I made a move to pick up Zamir White. I didn't have too much fab left, so I put out an $11 bid on him. Rob has, $170 left. He only bid $10, so I was able to steal Zamir White over him and start him against him. $1 difference there.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's touch on that moment here. So in our league, the championship game essentially is a free game for the two players when it comes to acquisitions. We are in a fab league, but second place getting their money back. Essentially, Rob could have spent $99, right? Just like I did. And it would have been no penalty to him because he's playing for free at this point. I found that very, very interesting that you both only bid 10 and $11. And it's so wild that it was so close in that way.
Well, I only had about $45 left going into this final week. So even though you do play free, you still are limited to that max $250 spending over the course of the year. So I only had $40 left. So I really had to split it up and bid $10 and $11 bids on a couple different guys in order to try and win something. Whereas Rob could have bid $30 on each guy he wanted to pick up, and it would have blown me out of the water. So it was nice to beat him by $1 on a bid on a guy I ended up getting the start as my third running back against him, and ended up with 11 points. Leaving halftime, I wasn't feeling great, but then the Kyron Williams show started happening in the second half of that game. 3 touchdowns all in the second half really boosted his score up to 27 points, and then I started feeling much better.
So yeah, when I saw that go down, I was like, okay, Kyron was starting to tear it up, especially that third quarter. But then simultaneously, I was watching James Conner rip up the Philadelphia Eagles. I was like, what is going on here? So I saw that back and forth happening between the two players. I was like, oh, this is pretty competitive here. And then Jalen Hurts was obviously putting up his points, but that was pretty much a wash with him and Josh Allen. 19 and 18 points respectively. But yeah, so you were able to match the James Conner push with that Kyron Williams situation. I think what really hurt Rob was his two running backs, Rashad White and James Cook, just did not show up.
Yeah, they had a Gibbs-like performance. Unfortunately for him, he had two of his running backs have a performance like that. And then as we've gone back and talked about rushing, Josh Allen did not play well against that Patriots defense, but 2 rushing touchdowns gives him 12 points there, which is huge for our league. So that kind of helped cancel out Hurts on his side, who had a pretty good game. But he threw 2 touchdowns over to Julio Jones. So I'm sure Rob, as the A.J. Brown, team owner in this league, was freaking out seeing Julio Jones steal 2 catches from him. And then I had Goddard debating starting Everett, and I went with Goddard, and Goddard got the 3rd touchdown. So even though Hurts is throwing touchdowns, it's not the A.J. Brown.
That was huge. When I saw the Goddard touchdown late in the game, I was like, "Oh, Cody, that might be a dagger." I didn't want to say it on the chat, but I was like, "That was a big play for you, right?" Because it sways to your way more than anything. So Tim, you're watching this and you're seeing kind of play out, and you're seeing Cody's team, cross that 100-yard mark, 100-point mark. Do you think he's got it in the bag, or were you kind of thinking Rob's got a chance with these 2 players left standing?
So I forget the timing of all the games. Like, so the Philly game was afternoon, right?
The Philly game was morning game, but it took longer.
It was morning. It was a 10 a.m.
It ended up ending after most of the morning games. After the morning games, he had Kelsey and Jefferson left.
Right. So you're still thinking like it's not over. I forget what, he had a pretty big lead, but the biggest question mark, which, I mentioned in our chat, was with Jefferson, the quarterback situation.
Yeah. I think I was up 33.
Obviously Kelsey.
And had Kelsey and Jefferson.
Well, Kelsey was the afternoon game, and Kelsey, I was thinking to myself, okay, if Kelsey can get Rob 10 points, Rob's within striking distance.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seemed very doable. Like, it definitely was not over by any means, but it just ended up that the Vikings started the wrong quarterback, and Kelsey had 1 point. So Kelsey really hasn't been great all year. I think, for the most part, it was just A.J. Brown's quiet last month, really, that kind of sunk Rob, especially this week. But I had the same thought when Dallas Goedert caught that. I think it was the last touchdown that Hurts threw in that game. It was pretty late in the game. And it was like, that just expanded your lead. So, it seemed like at that point it was probably going to go to you, but you can never count Justin Jefferson out, especially after what he did last week. You would think the rookie quarterback coming in could still get him the ball, but no, not so much.
Yeah, you can never count Jefferson out, and Kelsey was his 1st-round pick. You can't count him out either. Mahomes could have easily, gone to Kelsey for 2 short touchdowns and kind of padded his stats that way. So you never know what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Packers. We talk about the Packers at home, and I'm rocking today. I'm so happy with my boys, but I expected them to get lit up in Minnesota, no matter who was the quarterback, because that home environment, they knew what was on the line. The winner of that game controls their destiny by going to the playoffs next week, whoever wins. So I was like, the Vikings are going to – and this young kid was going to probably – I thought he would force feed the ball to Jefferson. And Packers played it beautifully, right? That defense really came in strong. They were getting to the quarterback. They made the quarterback switch at halftime back to Mullins. So they did exactly what, you needed him to, Cody, just essentially just shut them down. So,
I mean, that's what I needed, especially last week when Bryce Young was looking really good against the Packers, and that whole situation where the Panthers almost beat the Packers last week. It's hard to feel confident after you see that and see what Justin Jefferson did the week before, putting up 22. It still didn't feel great, even though I had a 30-point lead. Seeing what CeeDee Lamb did to the Lions on a primetime game, is like, here's another primetime game. I could see Jefferson going off. But luckily, the QB change was incorrect, and so it just worked out in my favor.
Jefferson's had some monster games against the Packers. I feel like. I mean, I'm sure you would know better than anyone, Manny.
That's why I was already prepared for it. I was watching last night with my pearls clutched, and like, oh boy, here he comes.
And even with Jair Alexander, if I remember correctly, in some cases, like, it didn't matter. And then
Nope.
you take him out this week. It's like the setup was there. It's just the Vikings keep switching quarterbacks, so yeah, so, too bad for Raw, but worked out for Cody. I just want to go back to the Texans defense. So like I thought that I was looking at, I always look at injury reports and stuff, see who's in and out, and like it seemed like the Texans had a lot of defensive injuries this week. So I was a little bit, you'd mentioned you were not that confident. I was kind of like, well, it's the Titans, they suck, but they had defensive line, like they had people out all over the place, corners, defensive linemen. So they still obviously had a monster game. So that was a good call.
They did. I mean, Levis was starting, and he, after those first 2 weeks was looking good, but the shine had kind of really come off him. And he is, more of a statue in the back, doesn't have too much rushing upside there. It was really a question on if Derrick Henry was going to be able to be stopped or not. And luckily they got the sacks. I think they had 6 sacks, and then they had the turnovers as well to go with it. So they really put, and they're playing for the playoffs. Titans aren't really playing for anything right now, so that extra motivating factor kind of helped swing my decision as well.
Probably got a lift from Stroud coming back too.
That too, for sure. And that's kind of why I went with Nico Collins as well there.
Yeah.
100% lift from Stroud being back. I also think D'Amico Ryans he's a great coach. We can't deny what he's done with the team. One season's turned it around. They made some great draft picks. Like Tim said, they had a lot of injuries on defense. Didn't matter. They came out and they really stuck it to Tennessee because they knew they had something to play for, right? So they're playing for that playoff spot in their playoff life. So it was great to see. It's still a very, very impressive start there, Cody. So well done and congrats. Way to gamble. And that's what it is, right? This game is about taking a chance on things that probabilities you think will happen and hoping that for the best once that happens. And you made the right calls there. So good stuff. Very nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about kind of looking at the probabilities and volume. I picked up Everett once Palmer was ruled out, and so I thought I'm going to have to start him over Goddard. Goddard hasn't done much. He's going to get the volume, but then when you look at who's realistically, are the Chargers going to have many chances to score a touchdown? Probably not, compared to the Eagles, which are constantly going to be by the goal line. Let me lean this way. Looking at my bench, a lot of the calls I made turned out to go kind of in my favor. The pickup for Zamir White over Zeke, it was only 2 points he outscored him, but still every little bit counts when you're in the finals. Including getting karma on your side. This has been a big karma year. There's been a lot of talk about drafting for yourself, drafting for other people, how that impacts you. If someone messages you saying, hey, congrats on making the finals. Do you want to maybe split the pot? Here's a percentage. What do you think? And you ignore them. The fantasy gods are going to kind of look poorly on that. If you don't at least reply and say no, thank you, it's at least common courtesy if you just leave them on read. So I think having karma on my side really did kind of help me push past that 100-point barrier and really held Rob back from getting past 90.
I can't argue it. I mean, I said it in our chat, like, what takes the sting off of losing the championship? Getting a portion of the pot. I don't understand. Like, we all want to win. Like, that's the main thing. Like, obviously the money is great too. But you're worried that if you win, you're going to get a little bit less money by splitting it. I don't understand the logic there. It takes a lot of things have to go right to make the finals in the first place. So I think you should, if you're both willing, you should both be willing to at least get some kind of reward because one of you is going to lose. So, Rob said, go big or go home. I mean, you get a pretty big payout if you win. So Cody got a much bigger payout because he didn't agree to split. So
it's true. I wonder how much projections kind of played into that too. He was expected to beat me by probably about 20 to 25 points looking at the ESPN projections. I wonder if projections were reversed, how confident he would be in just ignoring that text.
Yeah, those projections are
trash.
They can still get into your head.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Yeah. You can make the wrong call on who to start because the projection says one guy's going to get more. But yeah, maybe. And didn't the same thing happen last year, or not last year, the year before with Tim Carey?
2
Did
years
he
ago.
ignore you completely?
No, so I had asked him about a split, 75-25. He said no. I said, okay, look, you're probably going to win. How about like a 90-10 split? And then he ignored it, didn't reply. And, we beat him by 1 point.
And like, we split a pot. Obviously you beat me in the finals, and people thought I was crazy.
Like, I thought you were crazy
had
when you messaged me, and I said, "Are you sure? Like, your team's way better than mine. You want to split?" And you said, "Anything can happen. I'll take the split if you agree." I was like, "All right, if you're going to give me money," and
So, and
that's a position I would be
about that.
Yeah, you made the right call there, Tim. Yeah, right call there.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't feel good about losing, but I felt pretty good about the fact that I realized, like you said, anything can happen, and it doesn't matter how strong your team looks, how much momentum they seem to have. Crazy bounces happen. Julio Jones will catch 2 touchdowns instead of AJ Brown.
Yeah.
You can't predict this ever. So it's like you just gotta, if you get there, I think you gotta at least guarantee yourself some kind of reward for it, because it's not easy to make it that far.
You got to hedge your bet, right? You hedge your bet there by doing that. I'm even in the camp of, if I'm gonna win, I'll still offer more money to the loser just so I can get that trophy. I mean, I'll take the lower cut of the split.
Just to get the trophy.
Just to get the trophy. But I mean, even 55-30, 45 split, like that'll happen. But yeah, that was.
Well, I think it also gets into your head that you don't owe any league fees, so you have that to fall back on. Like, okay, I'm playing for free. Maybe you had a couple weekly wins. Maybe you were the #1 seed where you get a little payout of $50, $75, $100 here and there. Playing for free kind of allows you to, like, hey, I have no league fees. Worst case scenario, I break even. So I think having that in the back of your mind too, instead of still having to pay, it definitely plays a little bit of a role.
I still want to leave with some cash, especially with the amount of cash people are dropping now with the fab. I mean, Tim and I basically liquidated the entire fab this year. So
yeah.
But very, very interesting. So that's the way it went. Congratulations again, Cody. And you were rewarded with your consistency this year again, and I'm not gonna let it happen next year.
This is my 4th win now. I've won 2014. It's widely known. It was given permission for Ricky while he was at basic training in the Air Force to allow me to run his team for him. Everyone agreed to it. I did. Won a title then. Ricky had nothing to do with it, but his name somehow ended up on there with an asterisk.
His name is on the trophy, right? His name is on the trophy.
Yeah, I got to talk to Carlos about putting an asterisk on there. We're going to get that fixed. Don't worry. So we had that go on, and then a couple years later, I get officially invited to have my own team. The same year Tim actually joins, and Tim gets the title before I do. But that second year, I end up topping Tim in the finals for my second title. And then of course, 2020, going into that COVID year, the Rule 16 win. It was my 3rd title. I tied Javi, who's been an original member. We both had 3 titles, going for the 4th one, and I happened to beat him to it. I got it this year. And it was an interesting year, having Chubb go down, Mark Andrews go down. Kyron Williams was definitely kind of the pickup that helped stabilize me and save me throughout. But yeah, I played Rob twice this year, beat him in the regular season when he was undefeated, beat him again in the finals. Looks like I'm his kryptonite. His brother, Alex, was the highest scoring team. I beat him in the regular season as well. My ex-partner, who I taught so much to, there's a couple secrets I held back. As you can see, I beat Ricky in the regular season, played him in the playoffs, beat him. Another league we're in, I beat him 3 times, knocked him out of the playoffs, 5-0 against Ricky ever since he left me. Things for me they're looking up. 4-time champ, first Turkey Bowl 4-time champ that there is. I'm waiting to be called up to the big leagues. These are the minor leagues for me here. There's got to be some kind of Champions League I can move on to. I'm looking forward. Edgar, I still hate you. I should be renaming the trophy this year. Is basically the only consolation is you guys don't have to call the trophy something else. Edgar saved your guys' asses, because it could have been 20 or 21, 22, and then now 23, and the trophy would be renamed after me. So you guys should be thanking Edgar. Sure, he didn't play at the end of this year. Sure, he got last place, but that one title probably means more than most other ones out there.
Yep.
We can also thank you. Our infamous split. It was I played 3 in a row, but you took that one in the middle from me. So
that is true. It would have been your first three years in the league, which would have been terrifying.
Yeah.
Who is this monster?
that guy's gone now. You're safe. Yeah.
Luckily.
3 feet's hard, man. 3 feet's hard in this league. It's hard. It's
I know that like I haven't even sniffed a championship since then. So
back in the day where there were rumors you were making your own rankings, throwing the ESPN rankings in the trash, and you had your own Tim rankings that I heard about going on, and it was hard not to believe them the way you were playing and constantly in the finals.
I didn't use ESPN's rankings ever. That is true. I still don't, but I just I don't think I'm ranking guys as well anymore. So I have to go back to the drawing board on that.
Tough, man. Well, talking about players and rankings, I mean, we look at the top scorers of the season at by position. Quarterbacks in order: Josh Allen, number 1, with 360 points. Jalen Hurts, number 2, 334. Lamar Jackson, number 3, with 304. Dak over 300 points. So you had 4 QBs over 300 points this season. That's pretty monster. And then number 5 and number 6 QB are actually the biggest surprise for me. Brock Purdy at number 5 with 290.
Yeah.
And then Jordan Love at number 6 with 280. So really, really wild, scenarios when we talk about quarterbacks with their ability to score running touchdowns and those things. Jordan Love or Brock Purdy are not really that. The first 4 guys, Dak, Lamar, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, you can see the difference there, right? Those guys that can run the ball in, who can get those rushing touchdowns with their legs. Dak, maybe not so much either, but you can definitely see the point differential there. But yeah, I would say the top 7 quarterbacks, and guess what quarterback finished behind? I don't know if you know this, Tim. I know Cody and I do. Behind Jordan Love. What elite quarterback finished behind Jordan Love?
Number 7.
At number 7.
Wow. I mean, I would want to say Patrick Mahomes, but I think he's probably even further behind than that.
Good call. You nailed it. Yeah, Patrick Mahomes at number 7. So, 5 points behind Jordan Love going into the final week. So, kind of good.
You haven't lost your path for all, Tim. You still got it, man.
I'm kind of surprised he was that high. It seems like his year has just not been that good for the most part. And so
I think he started strong and tailed off pretty sharply, but his first 8 weeks were pretty strong. He was top 3 for a while there.
Okay.
But recently, he has tailed off.
I mean, he's still at 4,100 yards for the season and 400 completions. I mean, that's a big indicator. 27 touchdowns, right? Same throwing touchdowns as Josh Allen, but Josh Allen has way more rushing touchdowns. So, 15 compared to Mahomes 0. So,
I don't think it's his
Purdy
fault.
and Love both in the top 6.
It's a lot of it's not his fault. It's the guys he's throwing to. So,
a couple other big surprises in the top 10 of quarterbacks for the season. Jared Goff being right behind Patrick Mahomes there in the 8th
top 10 guy last year, though, so it's not too surprising.
And not too surprising, but I mean,
he was number 6 last year, if I remember correctly, 5 or 6. So.
Yeah, but people don't see Goff in that way. They don't see him as an elite quarterback, right? And you really go back and look, he is pretty elite. He's always a top 10 quarterback on the season. Since he left the Rams and since been in Detroit. But number 10 this year is the biggest surprise, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah,
I know Tim and I have always had a interesting thing to say about Baker Mayfield, but he's had a great season. I know with the Rams when he played at that ending season with the Rams last year, he it was like, okay, good for you, Baker. You had a couple good games there, but then with the Bucks, they took a chance on him and they've been rewarded for it. I mean, he's playing for the division next week. They win. They win the division. So Baker Mayfield has been pretty serviceable this year. I mean, 344 completions. He's gonna break 4,000 yards next week. He's at 3,900 right now. So yeah, not bad. 28 touchdowns. Not a bad.
Easily his best year. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it would have to be.
Yeah.
Also, look at the weapons he's playing with Godwin, and then also Evans, and then White can even catch balls out of the backfield too.
Oh yeah.
So they've played well.
No, and that leads right into, you talked about White and the running back position. So top 10 quarterbacks have been pretty stout, and I would say that out of those top 10 quarterbacks, we know who the elite guys are. It's the Josh Allens, the Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson. And outside of those guys, who was, are you more surprised by Brock Purdy or Jordan Love being one of the guys that wasn't drafted really in our league? And then they got picked up off waiver wires and had pretty good seasons.
I would go with Jordan Love. Just looking, when you compare weapons to weapons, Purdy, he's got McCaffrey he can dump balls off to, Kittle, Debo, Ayuk. It's the first team to have 4 guys go over 1,000 yards. I'm more surprised by Love. He's had Christian Watson in and out of the lineup. Romeo Dobbs in and out. Wicks has been hurt as well. A lot of Aaron Jones has been hurt. Look at how he's been dealing with just a rotating cast of characters, and he's just been solid throughout and ended up at top 6. So I'd say he's the bigger surprise when you look at the season as a whole and what he's had to work with. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say the same. I think, no one should be too surprised by Purdy because he looked pretty good last year. And then
coming off
obviously
the injury,
this was his first full season. Yeah, I think that was the biggest worry about him is how his arm would be, if it would have any effect. But otherwise, I think, the expectations for Love were probably a lot lower for any non-Packers fan. And he had some rough, Love started out pretty well, had some pretty rough games in the middle of the season. And then obviously he's been on a tear these last few weeks. So,
we should go
future
check
looks
some
pretty
of those
bright in Green Bay.
Week 6 and 7, see what Manny was saying about Love.
Weeks 1 through 4, I was on the Love train, right? I was get on the board, joining. I was all about it. Weeks 5 through 10, I was oh my gosh, did we make the right decision here? But last month of the season, he's been incredible. So I think you look at his stats compared to Aaron Rodgers in his first year starting compared to Jordan Love. Love's got a much better passer rating, completion rating, more touchdowns. So he's on a better trajectory statistically wise than Rodgers did. I'm not saying he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I'm not going to jump there, but as for a first year starter, he's definitely exceeded expectations, and I'm very happy about that. They win next week. They win. They lock up that last wild card spot. So for the second youngest team in the league, I think they'd be happy with where they're at right now. Oh, there we go. Got it. So let's move on.
I gotta go grab a charger real quick. I'll be right back.
Oh,
sorry.
Go.
All right, Tim. No worries. We'll break down these top 10 running backs, Cody.
Yeah.
We can all guess who number 1 is, right? CMC.
Yeah, I think it's by a wide margin as well.
Yeah, wide margin, 325. The next closest is Raheem Mostert at 230. So we're talking nearly 100 points difference from RB1 to RB2.
Yeah.
That is a wild situation.
Yeah. That just goes to show, even though McCaffrey was, the number 2 overall pick in our league, just how valuable even taking him at that spot was compared to even Mostert, who I think you got in the 9th or 10th round prior to you trading him when you traded him and Evans over to Ricky. So who do you think is a better value compared to where they were drafted when you look at those 2 guys?
It's obviously Raheem Mostert. I drafted him
with that 100-point difference.
Yeah, you were talking about because you expect McCaffrey to have those 20 points a game, and that drafted that high at that position, a top 5 pick, you're expecting to score 300 plus points like that. That if you're not doing
maybe
that,
the quarterback position. I don't know about receiver or running back.
Running back. He's a wide receiver and a running back. He does.
Yeah,
both.
In one. That's correct. Yeah.
So he's a special talent. I've always been a big fan of his. Even when he started at Carolina, I always knew he was very, very, as long as he stayed healthy, he was always going to take people to the promised land. And Raheem Mostert being the number 2 running back, I drafted him. You're busting me up about it, and for rightly so, because he's not the only player I drafted that's ended in the top 3 at their skill position. Also, Mike Evans was the number 3 wide receiver who I also traded away. So, I've drafted extremely well this year at the values. And the problem is I traded those players away because I didn't believe that they'd stay healthy due to historical trends that have happened with these players. So
you're right. I did derail you a little bit after Mostert. But I think number 3, if I'm not mistaken, is Kyron, who's another value guy coming off waivers, right?
massive
Yeah.
value, massive. And he
Yeah.
missed what 4 games this year?
I think he missed 4 or 5 weeks, or 1 week might have been a bye week. So I think he missed 4 games, but 5 weeks.
5 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even with missing 4 games on injury, number 3 running back, massive value there. So I would say between those two, Raheem Mostert and Kyron Williams, because ETN's the number 4 running back on the season, but he got drafted really high. He got drafted in the second round.
Second round pick by Romo.
Right. So he, at 200 points, you're like, okay, I can see that, right?
Yeah.
Averaging 15 points a game. That's what that breakdown to. So no, Raheem and Kyron Williams are definitely the highest value picks of the season.
And I don't know about you, but number 5, compared to how his season has been, is surprising to me. In our league, as a standard league, Derrick Henry came in as the number 5 running back, and it just seemed like he had a really underwhelming season, but came in at number 5 in our league.
I look at that.
Nicky even traded him away at one point to Angel.
I look at that total, and I'm like, and I look at his week over week, and a lot of double-digit weeks in there, but then a lot of low single-digit, like more than a handful of them. So a lot of very volatile season for Derrick Henry. And what we didn't see with Henry this year was that 40-point game, right? We typically every year see that one game where he blows up for 230 yards and 3 TDs. We didn't get that this year from him.
No.
So,
his highest yardage put out what looks like it was 122 yards. And the most touchdowns he scored was 2 in any game, a couple times. But he didn't really have that 150, 180 yard rush game. You're right.
Yeah. So
and
then you're right. Surprising to see him there in that 5 spot. But the number 6 running back, and again, I made this might be the best value out of all the picks, just where this guy got drafted. I mean, this was very, very late. And
no, he was, I think, a 4th round pick for he was drafted 53rd by Rob.
53rd overall, 5th round pick. Okay, so he took him before Mostert. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Still high value there. I mean, that's pretty good.
There was a lot of volume. I mean, a lot of these running backs, they're running backs by committee. They're splitting it 2 ways. In the case of Denver and some other spots, they're splitting it 3 ways. But over there, it was all white.
Yeah.
So I think that was them just giving the ball to Rachaad White so often really helped him with a lot of goal line carries. And he was their goal line back and 3rd down back, which is a huge value in fantasy football.
Yep. Breece Hall, same volume situation there as it comes with the Jets. He was right after Rachaad White.
And
Joe
for the season the Jets had, does that surprise you seeing him that high?
No, not really.
Coming
not
off
really.
the ACL injury.
The first couple weeks he started pretty slow, but once I knew he got going, he's a special talented guy. He's got, he can move really, really well, especially towards the latter part of the year. The Jets defense is so good that always keeps him close in games, right? If they were getting blown out every game because the defense is terrible, he would not have had the season he had. But since they're so good and stay so close, they're going to give him 15 to 18 touches a game. So, and Breece Hall only needs 2 or 3 of those to go 20, 30 yards, and he has a good fantasy day. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but Joe Mixon following him there, I traded for him, which I'm glad he ended inside the top 10.
Yep.
He did good. But the next 2 guys, it's surprising. You talk about volume split and how these 2 quarterback systems are back to back. These 2 running backs in the same team. One being your guy, Jahmyr Gibbs, Cody, and the other being David Montgomery, Rob's guy, who played each other, should have played each other in the final, but Rob benched him.
Yep.
But perfect example of that volume split. And you would love to see this Detroit say one of these guys is the guy, but
you would love to see that. We didn't really see it until Montgomery got hurt. Gibbs never really got hurt through the year. And then they really started giving Gibbs more work, and he showed that he earned it. Even once Montgomery came back, he started earning more shares, but they're a run first team. So even though they do split the carries, both guys still get more touches than even running backs, on other teams that aren't really splitting work as much. They're just such a run first team, especially once they get the lead. They'll give Montgomery 30 carries, and Gibbs will still end up with 15 to 18 touches on top of that. So it is interesting seeing them back-to-back so close together, only 3 points apart in our league, which is really, really fascinating to see. I took Gibbs in the 2nd round, kind of expecting more work out of him in an explosion year. But I think Rob got Montgomery in the 9th or 10th round, which is such a value there.
Yeah, great value. Great value there.
Yeah.
7th round. 77
7th
overall.
round. Okay. And I think he was on our podcast, months ago saying he even was like, I kind of need a running back. He's at the top of the ESPN rankings. I guess I'll grab him and see what happens. And it really worked out for him and helped him and Rashad White helped carry his team and pushed him to that number 1 seed until the finals. But
we talked about value, Tim, before you came back here. We're talking about Raheem Mostert and Kyron Williams being the 2 and 3 running back, and where both those running backs got drafted, extremely high value, right? So, one of the I traded Raheem away, but how was I to know he was going to stay healthy? Well, he's actually out now for last week of the season, but he's had a great year. Were you surprised by those two guys being the highest value running backs for the season?
Surprised, yeah. It's like Mostert, obviously was in a better situation to start the season. He had appeared to have a job. Kyron Williams came out of nowhere, really. So it's that was definitely the bigger surprise, and for him to be finished where he did while missing 4 games, that's definitely a league winner for a lot of people, champ here included. So, Mostert, what did he end up with? 20
as
touchdowns?
good as the year as
I
Mostert
forget
had,
what the final total was. So
I believe he had 20.
Yeah. Mostert had 18 touchdowns for Raheem Mostert and 12 for Kyron. So very, very good. 21 overall for Raheem, 3 receiving.
When you add the receiving ones.
Yeah. So 20 plus touchdowns on the year. Yeah, very, very nice. Great production out of running back. The running back that I'm surprised about this year that should have really excelled and done great was Bijan. Bijan's outside the top 10.
Really?
But the way that Atlanta runs the ball and their scheme is built on that, they're not really a passing team at all. You would expect him to have 20 plus touches a game and just had a monster year, but they just, I don't know, that didn't really come to fruition. And I really think that hampered Carlos's team in general, because that being his number 1 pick.
Yeah.
Were you guys surprised about the lack of production for Bijan?
A little bit, but they also had Algier, who had a really good year last year, and he wasn't going anywhere. And I think they even knew and kind of, relayed that they were going to use him. And with a rookie coming in, you never really know what kind of workload they're going to be able to get. I thought you were actually going to mention Pollard, being the guy you drafted, being a bigger disappointment than Bijan. That's another first-round guy who had the whole workload, it seems, to himself when Zeke left. I mean, you had a toddler out there as his backup in, preseason is what it looked like. So I thought you would mention Pollard. So I would actually put Pollard as a bigger disappointment over Bijan. I don't know what Tim thinks about the two of them.
Pollard is 100% the biggest bust of the year. But I was surprised by the production because I didn't expect Pollard to get the ball 20 times a game. I expected Bijan to get the ball 20 times a game because of the scheme, right? They had no quarterback. That's the difference there. But I did expect Pollard to have a much better season than he did. I mean, he's barely inside the top 20, and it was not a good season at all. Really, only 5 rushing touchdowns on the year. He's not even cracked 1,000 yards yet.
Yeah,
Uh-oh. We got you, Tim? Click, we're having some technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I definitely
Pollard,
agree with
I think, actually finished outside the top 20. I have him here at 23 in our league.
23?
He was even outside the top 20.
Oh, yeah. DeAndre Swift's 20. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
So
that's a big fall. And just above him, another guy that I'm kind of surprised by is Saquon. Saquon's at 19.
Pollard, there's a lot more. What's that?
Oh, go for it, Tim.
I think we're having some internet connectivity issues in the Mile High area.
We must be.
Yep.
But yeah, I was mentioning Saquon. He's a big disappointment. Ended up 19. I think Hobby might have gotten him in the second round, but early in the second round. I think he was expecting more out of Saquon, but that offense just kind of never really got going. So I don't know. Looking through the running backs, there are a lot of surprises, but part of that, comes with a ton of disappointments of guys that were drafted early and falling outside the top 15. Some guys even outside the top 20, and a lot of it is, you can't even fault due to injury. Some of it is just volume and workload in the offense in general faltering.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And when we get Tim back on here, I think he'd probably say Alexander Madison was probably the biggest bust when it came to running back. He was drafted in the top second.
I would say
round?
fourth or fifth round.
Fourth round, yep.
Yeah, he went back to back with J.K. Dobbins, who that's an injury issue. He probably was going to be set up for an explosion year. Looking at what Gus Edwards and Hill did, and even Keaton Mitchell, Dobbins can kind of do what those guys do, but better.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Very, very, very strange year. Devon Achan is someone I think that will probably go much higher in drafts next season.
For sure,
his explosiveness. I think he'll be a running back that gets targeted. Kyron, is he going to be a top 5 running back next year pick?
I think there's a good chance he is, unless the Rams happen to draft a running back with maybe a second or third round pick. Their draft capital now that the couple of years has passed, they have kind of restocked on their draft picks. They actually own some of their own draft picks. So we'll see where they end up going with their draft picks. If they take running backs, I could see, Kyron dropping, but if they're happy with him, which you can see clearly they should be, I can see Kyron being a top, especially in our league, a top 5, top 7 pick overall, being a standard league.
Oh yeah. Hey Tim, we got you back.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Hear you now.
All right.
Yep.
Good Lord. Sorry guys. This is getting frustrating, but so the point I was going to make, you asked me about Pollard versus Bijan.
Yeah.
I would say, there's a lot more uncertainty around Bijan, so Pollard's got to be the bigger disappointment. He was drafted after Bijan in our league. I think they were close, but with Bijan, you just didn't really know for sure what you're getting. It's kind of reminds me of like Todd Gurley's first year. He was with the Rams, Jeff Fisher's last year, I think, and it was just a bad team. And then the next year, McVay came in and brought a new offense, and obviously had a much better year. So I don't know if that's what Bijan will be, but you definitely could see there are flashes of him being a super talented running back. But with Pollard, you expected so much more than what he did this year, and the offense was good. He just wasn't. It's almost like he got phased out a little bit. So it's just kind of weird. But I'm sure I thought about taking him. I forget the draft selections. I know my first pick was Hill, and then I think you had the next 2 at the turn and took Pollard with one of those. And I probably would have drafted Pollard if he was still there for my next pick, but he wasn't. So.
Yep, that's exactly how it went down. Because if Hill dropped to me, I would have taken Hill. So it was the first time where I was going to think about taking a wide receiver with my first round pick. But since Hill was gone, I was like, all right, I'm going to just go back-to-back running backs here. And that's what I did. So
I think you took Garrett Wilson, though. You went Pollard Wilson, if I'm not mistaken.
Pollard Wilson. And then I took Kenneth Walker, my third pick. You're right. Yeah. So, which with the Garrett Wilson, right? I mean, that who knows what that would have been had Rodgers stayed healthy. So
yeah, that kind of leads us into our receiver conversation. When you look at the top 10 receivers there, Tim mentioned drafting, Tyreek Hill, which turned out to be a steal for him, even though he was a first round pick. He was, I think, the 4th or 5th receiver taken overall and ended up number 1 by a decent margin over CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, decent margin. Well, he's only, a handful of points over 13.
So it's like a game,
Yeah, one game over CeeDee Lamb, and Lamb just had that monster blow-up game where he just got PED tested for from Saturday night's game. So that definitely helped him get up there. But number 3 receiver again, Mike Evans on the season. This is Baker Mayfield. We talked about him being top 10 quarterback. The correlations there with Mike Evans, and another player I traded away. I think my fantasy prospects for making the final would have been a lot better. I had held on to Mostert and Evans.
I'm going to go out on a limb and agree with you there, Manny.
But in those top 10 wide receivers, we look at I'm gonna say Brown, then AJ Brown, Puka Nakua be the name there that is like, whoa, really out of nowhere.
The second Ram,
Undrafted.
that's kind of been the surprise of the year, in a different position.
Yeah.
Tyron and then Puka.
So do you put Nakua based off this year's projections or this year's outcomes and next year projections? Is he inside the top 10 for wide receivers? And is he in front of Cooper Kupp?
Cooper Kupp with the injury status, he's been, hurt previously. He's been in and out of the lineup even this year. I can see him being taken above Cooper Kupp, but I don't see him as a top 10 receiver going forward, just because when Kupp plays, they do really split. It's kind of like having those two running backs, except for here we have two high-end receivers. They're kind of splitting the work. Same with, if you look at the Eagles, you have Devontae Smith and you have AJ Brown. One guy is going to kind of end up, and it ends up being Smith with the Eagles getting less work. I don't think I would put him inside the top 10 receivers in terms of drafts next year.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me. I don't know either. It's almost like they kind of are bad for each other in a way.
Yeah.
Like Cooper Kupp has been just the guy for the last few years, and so now they have a legitimate second receiver, it looks like, and they're probably gonna, they're gonna trade good games. It's hard to usually when one of them has a good game, the other doesn't, which is kind of how it tends to work for the most part anyway. But so I don't know if I would put Nakua in the top 10, but I mean, top 20, I think would be an easy call. But I would still take, just based on what Kupp has done consistently. This year was a down year for him. Obviously, he was injured a lot, but Kupp's still got to go ahead of him for sure. So
nice. Within that top 10, top 15 wide receiver list that we can see there, in all of Debo, DJ Moore, Jamar Chase, they're all great wide receivers that demand 8 to 10 targets a game. Keenan Allen, same thing. Brandon Ayuk started to step up. Another guy I drafted who I traded away again, who's just outside top 10.
Common theme for this year.
Common theme this year. But a surprising one for me is Stephon Diggs. So I traded Tim for Stephon Diggs. I understand why Trim was so willing to trade off from him now, because he just hasn't had that connection since the end of last season to now. I don't see that same connection that they had in the first couple of years between him and Josh Allen. Are you guys feel the same way? You think like he's downgraded and he's securely outside that top 10, or would you, because he got drafted pretty high?
Mm-hmm. He started off the year pretty strong. I think it was, you could look at when they changed offensive coordinators, when they I think it's Joe Brady's his name, to offensive coordinator. They started kind of running the ball a little bit more, doing a little more play action and spreading the ball out. They've used Kincaid quite a bit more, and Diggs hasn't gotten the same amount of targets and the same routes as before. I don't know if that's what you see, Tim, kind of follow him a little closer than I did.
Honestly, I didn't really want to trade him. I didn't. It wasn't like I was dumping him. I just needed running backs.
Yeah.
So you had Kenneth Walker and Ayuk, and I've always kind of liked Brandon Ayuk, although I didn't really see, like, he's had some monster games in the last few weeks that I didn't really see coming. But I still, I viewed that as I was upgrading my running back and you were upgrading your wide receiver. I didn't really think Stephon Diggs would fall off a cliff like that, but it's been pretty rough a couple months for Diggs, and it's hard to say why. They've had some games they didn't throw the ball much, obviously, but I don't know if they haven't really had a legitimate number two. Gabe Davis has 3 good games a year, but otherwise does pretty much nothing. So I don't know if teams are just more and more game planning to take him out, but it's hard not to view him as one of the elite wide receivers, but it didn't happen this year for whatever reason. I think he had maybe 1 or 2 games more than 20 points, if I remember correct. And
Yeah, it looks like one game. He had 19 in week 1, so close to 20, but week 4 against Miami, he had a 35-point outburst. But, even besides that, he's had quite a few games between 12 and 18 points. But this last month, when he's been mostly on Manny's roster, after their bye week, they come back. He's put up a 2, a 4, a 3, and a 2.
Yeah, just brutal. So not sure what's going on there. Definitely some with the play calling. Josh Allen's not been as accurate. I'd say he's been running the ball more. Josh Allen really is the entire offense for the team. So we'll see if they can still get by playing that way in the playoffs. Highly doubtful, but we'll see.
Yeah. Now, so we've talked about a couple running backs that were big disappointments that fell out. It seems like looking at the receiver list, there's kind of less receivers that stick out as big disappointments. Like Justin Jefferson, you could point to, but he had his hamstring injury and he missed a ton of time, so it's hard to call him a disappointment. Chase, he still ended up top 10, even with the Joe Burrow issue early on, getting a slow start and then having to play with the backup quarterback. Looking at how safe some of these receivers, Diggs, you were talking about having a slow year, down year. He still ended up at number 12 overall in receivers. Would that make you look towards drafting a receiver earlier in the draft because they seem to be a little safer than running back? Does that change some of your drafting strategy? I know we're big running back guys, but looking at this now, more running back disappointments compared to receivers, does that change your mindset here next year?
Good question. I went receiver this year with my first 2 picks. I took Hill and then Diggs, just because I viewed them both as like borderline first rounders anyway. But I was hoping to get running backs. I think it makes you just like I completely whiffed on running backs this year, so makes you just take a closer look and try to do a better job. Like with receivers, you can find them a little easier, I think, is what that shows. But with running backs, they're hard to come by, and especially this year, it felt like there was, you had Kyron Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs started very slow but came on strong. McCaffrey, there's just not a lot of other reliable running backs, so it's just so much harder to find them than it is receivers. So
definitely,
I don't know.
Less volatility with the wide receiver position. You can take. I would say the only real wide receiver that had a major drop off to where they were projected was just as I said, Jefferson because of the injury. But I would say Garrett Wilson. Wilson projected was to have 200 plus points this year, but losing Rodgers, he didn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was an injury to a different position.
Yeah, considering the season he had, I'm surprised with Zach Wilson being such a terrible quarterback and their quarterback situation in general. If he had a serviceable quarterback, who knows what the prospects would have been. So I would say those 2 guys were outside of that, though. All the wide receivers that got drafted within the first 20 picks all did exactly what they were supposed to.
Yeah, a lot of them ended up kind of within that top 20 range. There are some surprises that jumped up, but yeah, for the most part, a lot of them finished in the top 20.
Maybe
you just have to really find the value with running backs, because if you swing and miss on one early, if your first pick is a running back who is a bust, or borderline bust like Bijan, I think you could call not a total bust, but just not what you hope for. That can sink your season. When you could have had Tyreek Hill there and then maybe taking a chance on a running back later, like what Rob did. Didn't work out for him in the last week, but he still got a lot of value at running back with Rachaad White and Montgomery. Those are guys who were both drafted late. So, it's tough to say. I don't know what I'm going to do next year, but I'll have to start thinking about it. So.
It's almost harder if they're borderline bust, because you can still see some of the spike weeks and it causes you to put them in the lineup. Whereas if they're a complete bust, you could put them on the bench, you can cut them, move on, do something else. If they're a borderline bust and all of a sudden they still have a 15-point game, a 20-point game, you're putting them back in your lineup, and then here comes the 3, here comes the 2, maybe back-to-back weeks. So you almost would rather them be a complete bust than a borderline bust. So then you can just give up and move on.
Oh, yeah. It's a good point. Yeah, you don't want the volatility. You want consistency, volatility. Because you say going to that first round playoffs, you're putting up 100 points 3 straight weeks, and then you put up 70 because of that one down week in that first round. So yeah, you don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
Let's end the top players segment with tight ends, and tight ends is always unique because it's probably, we talk about running backs being scarce, tight end being the most scarce position in our league. It's just it's always a wasteland every year. Outside of the top 3 tight ends, you really get nothing. So the way this season shook out and surprisingly ended was, Travis Kelce being drafted number 1 tight end, consensus across the board in every league. He ended number 3 on the season so far. He's at number 3 right now, sitting behind George Kittle at number 2 and number 1, Sam Laporta, rookie tight end. When do you hear of a rookie tight end being the number 1 tight end in football?
I think not since Gronk's season. Gronk's rookie year, he went off, but even prior to that, I don't remember one.
Yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it's not very common. That's for sure. You'd have to go pretty far back to. I want to say like maybe Jeremy Shockey had a good rookie year or something. I could be completely wrong on the name, but that's how uncommon it is. I mean, that's like going back 20 years. So, but yeah, it's just weird to have Kelce be 3rd.
Yeah,
like he's always, like, for the last, it feels like the last decade, he's been number 1 by a mile. Like no one even close. So.
I think 7 of the last 8 years he was the top tight end, and there was one good Mark Andrews year, probably about 4 years ago, where he topped Kelce. But even then, Kelce was 2. But yeah, 7 of the last 8, I believe he was the top tight end.
But even in those years, Kelce was always been the top 5 of receiving, not just at the tight end position, at receiving overall and receiving points.
Like he'd be a top 10 wide receiver if he was a wide receiver, probably most years. So
this year it looks like he'd be about 22, 23.
Yeah. Don't know if it's the beginning of the end. I mean, he's getting up there in age, but just a weird year for him and that entire offense, really.
And how much did Tyreek Hill kind of running deep open up a lot of those underneath routes and intermediate routes that he thrives on, without having that solid deep threat that you would trust to actually catch the ball? Teams can really target on Kelce and focus on him a bit more.
Yeah, especially this year. I mean, with nobody was concerned about anyone else on the field, really. Rashee Rice came on pretty strong, but
that's more of the last 4-6 weeks.
But when they keep trotting out Kadarius Toney and
MVS,
he had another drop this week.
It was so bad. That drop was so bad. It was like right in his face, and
he had open field ahead of him.
yeah, it was going to be probably a 30-yard gain at least. I think it was on a 3rd down.
Yeah.
So it's just. I hate the Chiefs. I'm a Chargers fan. They're in the division. I don't want them to win, but I felt myself almost feeling bad for Mahomes at some points this year, which is really weird to say. But just like when he throws all these perfect passes that are just getting dropped. So it's teams I'm sure were just triple covering Kelce because who else is going to beat you? So
that's on 3rd down.
Yeah.
So Tim, I with tight end, we always get annoyed at how bad they are, how the position is. You actually drafted the number 6 tight end on the season, Cole Kmet.
Oh boy, here we go.
It's weird, right? Like, because I understand why you got rid of him, because you got those 3 weeks. You're like 3 straight duds, but then he goes and pops off here again. And the last, when Ricky picks him up off waivers, it's the guy goes up like, when I look at that, I'm like, Cole Kmet's the 6th best tight end in the league. Holy crap, that's crazy. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, and I do think I think he's a good tight end. I just think sometimes it's the situation is not good. I mean, Fields was out and for a stretch, and also not playing very well a lot of the time, but. Their offense has looked a lot better. Well, the whole Bears team really has looked a lot better in the last month or so. It's just, I drafted him to pair with Justin Fields, and that was obviously a bad combo to start the season.
Stack.
So it could have paid dividends later in the year a little bit, I guess. But I ended up getting Dalton Kincaid while he was. He had a nice little run there, but he's also fallen off a cliff the last few weeks as well.
Since
I think he finally
came back.
Yeah, and I think he had a okay game this week, but yeah. So it's tight ends are just, you think if you're Rob and you draft Travis Kelce, you think that's just set it and forget it. And obviously you're not going to probably drop him unless he's injured, but that was not the case at all this year. So it's just kind of weird that Alex ended up with Laporta and Hawkinson.
And Hawkinson. So Alex got 2 of the top 5 tight ends. Yeah.
Number 1 and number 4.
Yeah.
If you're in that position, do you guys, trade one of them, use one of them as trade bait, holding on to both those tight ends? Because you can't, in this league, there's no flex spot. It's a running back / receiver. You cannot play 2 tight ends.
You trade them. You got to trade one. I mean, you got to capitalize on that limited resource that's available. If you got 2 guys that are, and they were consistently by halfway through the season, they were both within the top 4 tight ends. Like, trade one of them away so you can get an elite wide receiver or something, that's out there on someone's bench.
Wide receiver is a spot where he could have used an upgrade. He had pretty strong running backs. He had Mahomes. Receiver is a spot he could have turned a tight end into a solid receiver for him and kind of been, more consistent for him, especially when Keenan Allen got hurt.
Yeah. Now, I would have traded away probably Laporta due to the fact when Jefferson got hurt and Hawkinson became the primary target. That would have been the way I played it, but then Hawkinson ends up going out on IR too, so he would have been screwed there. But it's
you're gambling with the injury thing with any position you trade away.
Yeah, so
it's hard to say you get more value from. Like, is someone going to trade away an elite wide receiver for Laporta, who's a rookie who maybe just off to a hot start and isn't all that great, or Hawkinson, who's established himself as one of the better tight ends? But yeah, I think that was definitely a misstep, not trading. Maybe he tried. I don't know. I didn't get offered either of them at any point. So, but he definitely should have traded one of them at some point. So,
well, I'll make you feel better about your tight end selection, Tim. Angel drafted David Njoku in the 10th round of the draft, and he let him go. And the hobby ended up getting him, and he was number 5 tight end on the season. So
I'm sure he got most of his points in like the last 3 weeks alone.
Yeah, but he sure did.
Yeah.
But he still drafted him. I'm sure that was well after I drafted Komet. So
yeah, week 14, 22, 19, 11, 12. That's outstanding production. Yeah. But even before that, he was averaging 6 to 8 points a game. He'll take that from a tight end, really. It's not.
Unless you have Kelce or Mark Andrews and maybe now, Laporta, you're really just hoping for a touchdown coming from your tight end. Some kind of 3-yard touchdown. And maybe if you can get 5 catches, that's an extra point in this league, plus 30 yards. That's all you're really hoping for.
Yeah. So, yeah, crazy stuff, Hobby drafted Kittle. Kittle was a great pick this year, 8th overall. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Hobby probably had Hobby and Alex definitely drafted the best tight end situation. So good on them.
Yeah. I don't know where he got CeeDee Lamb, but CeeDee Lamb was probably second round. I'm sure he was not first round.
Yeah,
so
second round.
Second round.
So it was just too mmany Cowboys in week 1 of the playoffs. But Javi had a pretty good team. It's just the Cowboys laying that egg in week 1 of the playoffs. So
yeah, we might have to do a draft recap show because looking at the beginning of that second round, Manny takes Garrett Wilson, then Tim takes Stephon Diggs, and then CeeDee Lamb goes right after, and then Amon-Ra.
Yeah, Amon-Ra too. Amon-Ra had a great year. Yeah, he was a top 5 wide receiver. So yeah, very, very different, redrafting situation that would happen obviously at the end of the season. So, but that's the way it goes. I drafted away 2 top 5 skill players. So shame on me. Top 3 skill players with Mostert and Evans. So I have to go back to the drawing board and see what happens there. But to end out the show again, Cody, congratulations. Great job.
Thank you very much. I think the biggest lesson from this year is to really just play the right way. We have guys that are benching players because they're up by a few points going into Monday night. It completely turned their season around. Respond to text messages, be courteous to each other. We have guys in the last place game just playing dudes that are hurt and out. So just play the game right. I think that's the biggest lesson here. Get karma and the fantasy gods on your side. And I think having both those teams, I did lose Chubb, first round pick. It's hard to win a championship when you lose your star running back. But I just played the game the right way, and I think that really helped, lean in my favor.
Play the right way. I love that. Great takeaway. Tim, what's your takeaway for the season?
Wow, you don't even remember losing Mark Andrews either?
Yeah,
I do remember, but that was later on in the year. Believe me, I remember.
Well, that was still pretty early though. That was like what, week 4 or 5 maybe. So
no, he made
no,
it to
he lost it week 12, I think.
Yeah, week 12.
Mark Andrews.
Yeah,
he had gotten hurt. I think missed a
Wow.
game, but then he came back and then really hurt his knee in week 12.
He got hurt in week 11 against Cincinnati. Yeah, so he didn't play week 12 on.
Wow, that feels like months ago somehow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
a lot
it's
changed
still,
since then.
but still, you lose a guy like that hurts too.
Yeah.
So,
Oh yeah,
just an even better job by doing that with losing those two guys, and Kyron Williams for a good stretch of the year. But anyway, I agree though. Yeah, just play to win. Like we have our league set up so that there are incentives to keep playing every week, and we've made it to where it doesn't cost anything to pick up players. You can still win the high score money for the week, so that even if you're not going to win the championship, you owe less at the end of the year. So there's always a reason to try to win. Maybe someone else needs you to beat somebody, and like I had a situation like that where I was worried I might not make the playoffs because Carlos played he had 3 starters out when he was playing Ricky late in the
more.
Season.
I think it was 5 or 6.
So luckily it didn't end up mattering, but that kind of thing can be frustrating. It might not be a big deal to you, but it might be a big deal to someone else. So just play the right way, and sometimes you have a little bit of luck. You'd have to get some luck to get to the championship. Not all luck,
It's mostly skill.
Hey, I'm not saying there's no skill involved. But things do have to go your way, though. You do have to get, some good matchups, like playing me in the first week.
That definitely helped.
But you earned the higher seed, so that's why you played a guy like me. So, yeah, rough year for me overall. I ended up finishing 6th, so middle of the pack, just kind of like where I.
But you were still making moves till the end.
Yeah,
yep.
I mean, it's because you never know. Some of the moves I made were okay. Achan didn't end up, quite being the season saver that I thought he would be. But
neither did Charbonnet.
Yeah,
Charbonnet didn't come to fruition.
I just really wish that I didn't miss the boat on Kyron Williams. That just that was under the radar, I think, for everyone except for Cody. And who knows how many more games I would have won, what position I'd be in now, but hey, those are the things you got to do. So
those are the things you got to do. That's league winners are come out of unlikely places, and Kyron was one of those for sure. I takeaway for me is Cody, I love your play the right way, play to the end. Just communicate with the team league. I think that's why we started this. So I started this whole situation. We got this going, and we started league coming back and watching and starting to have more interaction, talking about what's going on. It's important, right? If your league doesn't communicate, then it really doesn't foster trades and those things and people being moved around. I think we had more trades this season we've had any other season. So I'm really happy about that.
Yeah.
Easily. To my detriment, but that's okay because I love seeing people take a chance, take a risk. That's what this whole thing's about.
Yeah.
I hate the fact that we've used to have players in the past will draft their team, and that's the team they ended the season with. I'm like, good gosh, man.
Yeah.
Like, just take a chance on something. So I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that the league's grown, and not happy to see Cody win multiple championships. That stings a little bit, but
that's never gonna end. Sorry.
But as far as what the league has done to evolve and to grow, and we continue to build off of it, and next year we'll have some new rules that we'll be bidding on when it comes to actually drafting your own team. That's going to be a big topic of discussion. We'll evolve and we'll adapt. So communicate when you run any type of fantasy league. Communication is the key, and just don't stop talking to your league mates even through the year. We have our great WhatsApp chat where we're all constantly sending memes and jokes and everything. It's a great way to keep it going and to keep the action alive. So
plenty of trash talk as well, depending on the matchups.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's all in good fun.
oh yeah.
Sometimes it's the trades that you don't make.
That's what I've heard.
So, I mean, the season's over now, so I have no problem bringing this up. I declined. I think
Is this a little yes Mames segment? Is this a yes see Mames? See Mames?
You could call it that because I could have. It's you wonder what would have happened if I accepted your Josh Allen trade. I think you might have offered it twice.
Every day. After
So,
Justin Fields had a couple of good back-to-back weeks with Diggs.
Yeah, I think. Well, I forget if you offered him once or twice. It was. I know it involved Tyreek Hill, who I didn't really want to trade.
Diggs. I'm pretty sure it was Diggs plus Fields.
I think I countered. Well, it was so long ago. That was like early in the year. It was probably around week 3 or 4. So
yeah,
but you just you wonder how things might have been different if. Because I think you had Joe Burrow at the time, and maybe you were feeling okay with him. And
feeling good, yeah.
Indeed, I was.
Maybe I'm the reason that Cody is the champ this year because I declined that trade. Because who knows what would happen, but
it could be you. It could be another player because there was a Kyron for Bijan trade in about week 3 or 4 that was out there that got declined a couple times in back-to-back weeks. That could really change things as well for me.
Yeah. So sometimes. You might offer a trade that ends up being declined, and it ends up being the right one. Manny, you were on the wrong end of the trades this year, but
I was on the wrong end. Yep.
Ricky ended up being a centerpiece of a lot of trades. I think Ricky himself made 3 trades, and with Angel, with myself, and with Manny, and ended up on the top end of most of them.
Yeah.
Yep. So, yep. But I don't know how much that would have upgraded my team if I had traded Hill. Got Josh Allen, more QB points, less wide receiver points. I don't know, but obviously that would have been a better trade for me in the long run. So, oh well.
That's you would have the Diggs. You would have the Diggs Allen stack at that point, right? So, if you had accepted that,
I forget. Like I said, I think there were multiple different trade offers. I think he offered me Allen for Hill, and then I might have countered with Diggs
Godwin
and someone
Diggs.
else for
Diggs,
and so I don't know, but hey, whatever. It's revisionist history. It doesn't matter anymore. So
no one can predict the future.
Yep. You would have told me that Mohim and Evans would have gone the whole season without being injured. Like, you're crazy,
Yeah.
Both guys being over 30 and having career years, so just wild situation.
Well, I mean, the trade when you made the trades, it's not like nobody voted against any of them. I don't think anyone thought they were lopsided. Just
no, just
even our trade, it looks lopsided kind of now, but it didn't at the time. It looked like you were getting the best player involved out of all of them.
Exactly. I felt like I was targeting the best player. Exactly. So
but I was happy with the trade movement, people taking risks, and it was nice to see some of that activity going on.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Well, great season. We'll try to get this going maybe once a month just to do for off-season discussion. But great season overall. Great work. I'm looking forward to next season already.
I sure am.
The barbecue will be interesting this year. Who knows what location it'll be at? Edgar, you cannot host at my house again. You will have to find another location to do so. Great season, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you both for being part of this. It's been great. It's been fun. It keeps the channels open. I hope you guys have enjoyed as much as I have.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's been fun doing it with both you two. I look forward to seeing everyone at the party.
Thanks for keeping this thing going and hosting it and getting us on the meetings and handling all that stuff every week. So it's been fun. We kind of try to do it last year in a different way, or I don't remember if it was the year before, but this is it's kind of nice that some of the other league members have been watching this, so it's pretty fun. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I won't see you guys at the barbecue. Maybe virtually or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
we'll get you on
Yeah,
virtually.
we'll get you
Google
on.
Meet
Yeah, because we're gonna have the league discussion, so you'll definitely be
involved.
Yep.
I gotta send money to Cody. So
Please do.
can't wait to find out how much it is.
Oh yeah, that's right. She's going out soon. Yeah, I'm not looking
Yep.
forward to doing that.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
it's
thank
been
you,
fun.
everybody.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see
Good
ya.
deal. Have a good one.
Happy New
Good
Year.
season.
Have a good one.
Happy New Year,
Happy New
guys.
Year.